Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we explore the strategies, the insights, and the best practices that help families and their advisors build and manage successful family offices. I am your host, Christi Van Rite, and each episode, we dive into the key elements of running a family office. Whether you're a family looking to structure your advisory team for long-term success, or you're a professional managing the complexities of a multi-generational enterprise. From financial oversight and operational efficiency to selecting the right advisors and creating a lasting legacy, this podcast is here to provide practical guidance and expert perspectives. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we talk all things family office. I am your host, Christi Van Rite. Most families are incredibly thoughtful about how they build and preserve wealth. But when it comes to philanthropy, it's often happening in parallel, not necessarily truly integrated into this broader strategy. And a lot of times that's where things can tend to break down. So today I'm joined by someone who works right at the center of that intersection. Kerrie Mitchell is the managing partner of FSO Partners, where she works with families, family offices, foundations, and nonprofits to bring greater clarity and intention and impact to their giving. With over 2 decades of experience in fundraising and nonprofit operations and philanthropic strategy, Kerrie has helped mobilize hundreds of millions of dollars in capital, always with a focus on aligning values, legacy, and true long-term impact. And so today's conversation, we're going to talk about how families can be more intentional with their philanthropy, how advisors can better support that work, and where things tend to break down when there isn't alignment across the advisory team. So with that, welcome, Kerrie. I am so happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It is fabulous to be here.
So you really do work at the intersection of family offices and philanthropy. What pulled or pushed you to this space?
Truly always that curiosity of what's possible and how to connect people with progress. So for me, that started in college. I had a professor who opened the door to fundraising in the nonprofit world. So for me, it aligned perfectly with what I wanted, what I thought I wanted. So that very idealistic human, as well as the ability to actually have some fun conversations and things. So that's where that started. And then I have an actual other half, my identical twin sister, who is the more entrepreneurial of us, started FSO about 8 years ago. And I joined her 3 years ago. And then I would say that's when my mission really took over for FSO, because I saw the opportunity with, like you said, there is a lot of opportunity within the family office, family foundation, within that space. And there were so many gaps that could also truly be opportunities for families. So yet again, with that curiosity, wanting to work with good people, this was what pulled and pushed me here. And, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd been like, oh no, never. But yes, this is the perfect place and I think the perfect time.
Love that. So when we were getting to know each other, I feel like we had a little bit of a bonding moment over the fact that, a lot of times when we start working with families, they'll have a foundation, they'll have a DAF or a donor advised fund, or they'll just give a little here and there. And we talked about structures and how without sometimes a structure is just, hey, you should do a DAF. Hey, you should do a foundation. Hey, you should being the operative word here. And there's not necessarily the pre-thought that comes to that should or that suggested structure. Thank you. Somebody else gets it. We don't just open a structure and then figure it out later. We both talked about starting these conversations with families about their why before recommending a vehicle or a structure to do it through. So I just want to dive right in.
because I feel like that is such an important piece for these families. What does that conversation look like in the real world between you and a family? That very beginning conversation.
I think one is also understand is the real world, usually you and I are entering conversations because there's been something. There's already vehicles, there's some unwinding that needs to happen. So a lot of our conversations will start there. That being said, every conversation I have with clients starts with discovery. So we try to set that feeling of curiosity and that wherever they are in the process is okay. There's a breath, there's those kinds of things if we're okay. There's always opportunity. And for that, it really is about their why, or even maybe even before why, because they're coming, they have had a liquidity event. There's a change within their family. So it is what do you want or what do you need your wealth to create today? What do you want from tomorrow and years from now? So that's a lot of the time an entry point for some of that, but it is also there. We're all emotionally connected to our money. So I also start with, depending on who they are, sometimes I'll even start with like their money story. What's your first memory of money? What's your first memory or act of generosity that really gets to kind of where they're starting? I will even revisit that question with clients I've been working with for 5 or 10 years because things kind of come up. So anytime I feel like we're in a discovery phase, that's where we start. Okay. And then we go from there. But figuring out their why, figuring out what their emotional connection to their money, to their legacy, that's where we start. And it looks pretty much the same for everybody.
Okay. So what happens when a family thinks they know their why or their why story, but what's actually happening tells a very different story?
For that one too, because same thing. We want people to come to this with a sense of curiosity, and sometimes that means that they need to feel safe. So a lot of times we'll even approach that one of that could have been their why, even if it wasn't. It could have been your why a few years ago. It could have been your why a generation ago. So we always then restart the conversation with their why today, with how their family, their structure, the needs, the values that they have. Because truly, I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago.
Yes.
What family truly is as they grow and change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is another great starting point. And sometimes it's with the advisors, though. I think sometimes even that's a different conversation, but with advisors, it's actually, I was going to say, it's usually easier to ask the why questions with families. The advisors, it's usually that gives them just as much pause as it does family members. So sometimes that's who's coming to us is the advisors. So I'll ask them some of these same questions. What are the values they came to you with when they started with you? What are their whys? What's their North Star today? That's usually where we start. And then there's some other, I think, leading questions I'm happy to get into if we really want to geek out, but I think there's so much more we could touch on. But it helps when people can come to the answers themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, there is so much we could geek out on, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of time to do that. But I love the premise that you don't just ask why at the beginning. Certainly, that is definitely the time to ask why, but also asking why along the way and reminding them and coming back and bringing them back to that why, that moment of, what are we doing here and why are you doing it? Why is this important? Because you're right. We're not the same people that we were 20 years ago. We're not the same people that we were 10 years ago, that we were 2 months ago. I mean, you really do need to revisit, why you are doing this. And I hope if a family is hearing this, they hear just because you gave to someone 20 years ago doesn't mean that they're still the right group for you to give to today, because your ideas have changed, your methodologies have changed. I mean, who knows what has changed in your life and what's now important that wasn't important back then. So don't be afraid to ask why often throughout your time donating.
Yes.
And giving.
And I love also when there is a bit of comfort, a bit of trust, actually. I mean, comfort, trust. What are some of the mistakes you feel like your family? Honestly, my daughter gets out of the vehicle every morning and I'm like, make some mistakes. With that too, the donor journey, there is an arc that we all take. There's a reason where the extraordinary is ordinary, but it's still extraordinary for us that we all start as philanthropists giving a gift. And then we go on the journey. And part of the journey and toward that top of the arc for any of us are that we've learned, we've shifted, we've realigned things several times. So we like to talk about too with FSO, whether it's advisors or families, we're not here to solve all of your challenges because you need some of those challenges. What we are here to do is save you some time and have a framework to help you to work within that helps you come back, helps you move forward backward. Like there is that aspect of we're here for that journey. We're not solving all your problems because if we did, then what fun would that be? But also you would learn the same things.
That's right. That's a very good point. So you mentioned at the start, a lot of times when you or our firm starts working with families, they tend to have some vehicle in place. Sometimes, not all the times, but a lot of times there's some vehicle in place. And sometimes that is either it wasn't the right vehicle to start with, or it's not the right vehicle now. Could be either way. Either whatever the catalyst, we're now looking at unwinding one of those structures. And certainly a few are easier to unwind than others. If you have a foundation and we're unwinding that is strap in. Like we got some work to do ahead of us. We've done it and it's not fun. So if you're hearing this and someone says, you should start a foundation, I want you to seek counseling. Seek a counselor who can help you go through that to decide if that's actually what you need to do or not. But I want to talk about the donor advised fund, the DAF, because that is, I think, one of the most prevalent giving vehicles that families tend to come across because they're easy to start. They're, using Schwab, Fidelity, most of your brokerage accounts, they have donor advised funds. They make it very easy for you to give, very easy for you to donate appreciated stock so you don't have the tax gain. There's lots of great reasons to have a DAF. There's also some reasons maybe that you wouldn't do a DAF. They actually are not the perfect vehicle. There are, depending on who you want to give to. So for people who really don't know what a donor advised fund are, but are curious, how do you explain what makes them different from just writing a check to a nonprofit that you came across and that you like? What's the difference?
I love to start this as I would basically any age. So any age, but really have never really just approaching philanthropy from just the ground up. So for that, I would say giving a gift. It is, you write a check. Simple, done. You have to make the decision fairly quickly. I mean, within 12 months, there's reasons, right? But it is a fairly quick and done. Wonderful. There's wonderful reasons to do that. And then with a DAF, it is in essence I'd say, like, just explaining this to somebody a couple weeks ago, and because it was a few generations, it's like a piggy bank. You are putting that in a piggy bank. You are, in essence, but a piggy bank with a bank. So like a savings account for a nonprofit. You are going to put that money in there. It's going to earn some interest. It's gonna earn some money and make some money for the fund. It is, you give it now, and it can continue in perpetuity. That is amazing. It's a great opportunity. So that means that it gives you some leeway to make some decisions as you're making so many other decisions right now. Like you said, there can be some complicated assets that could more easily be put into a DAF. There's some phenomenally strategic reasons to start a DAF. The challenge is when you are starting that DAF, there's a lot of times the advisors it is about the ease of starting it. It is not necessarily accounting for the humanness of then giving. So if you have a family, you're an individual, and you really looked at how you want to give and you want to do it quickly, great. Do that. But really looking at a DAF as another tool and understanding if that's what's good for you. And if it is even just that, I talk about it this way too, if it's giving you time, still put some deadlines on that calendar for you and for your family. Because if we say someday never comes, it is not actually the tool that your family says it needs and wants for its North Star, for the mission and values of your family. And in that case, I would not usually, but at least with a foundation, you have more requirements.
Incentive.
There are laws and the IRS that are saying you must do this way. But some families do need that so that they actually
move forward,
do what they do.
That's right. Yeah. What did you tell me how much money is sitting in donor advised funds right now, unused?
So I'm waiting for the new statistics, and I'm pretty excited for that one, just in sense of how large it will be. But it's upwards of $326 billion. And that's as at the end of 2024. So we don't have 2025 numbers, but that is a lot of asset under management. It's a lot.
So for those listening, a lot of times your CPA or your financial advisor will recommend a DAF, a donor advised fund, because they are easy to set up and because you can get the immediate tax credit, tax gratification from a DAF. You can put it in on December 31st, though I do not advise you to do that because it really strains everybody's resources. So don't do that. Do it in November or something, or earlier in the year. But you can use those DAFs from a tax planning purpose or an estate planning purpose. A lot of times an estate planning attorney will recommend them. That's only one side of this conversation, and it's a small side. So, if someone recommends, hey, you should give money, if that's not in your ethos, if that's not core to your person, don't do it. Even if it does give you the tax advantage or, okay, fine, do it, but then just turn around and let it go. Or, so there's that side. But that other side that you're talking about, Kerrie, is why are you doing this? And 300 and however many billions that are sitting ungiven inside these donor advised funds tells me that a whole lot of people did a whole lot of tax planning and not a whole lot of thinking about why or to whom what changes we want to make in the world with these dollars. Because why is there $300 billion sitting in accounts rather than pushing those out to groups that could use that money to make a difference in the world?
And we also will see a lot more this year. So I would say in 2025 would be really interesting because of a lot of the tax law changes. We are going to see exponentially more money that are now in DAFs with, like you said, that exact reason of the advice has been for tax purposes. And I think there are a lot of philanthropic people as well. The benefit also, I would say, of DAFs, of most DAFs, whether it's Schwab, it's a community foundation, it's NPT, all of them have philanthropic advisors. I'd love to say, come to us, of course, but honestly, where you have set up your DAF likely has philanthropic advisors who can help with that due diligence. On the granting side of it, just point blank, if it's even, like you said, in your ethos at all, there are phenomenal resources baked into your accounts.
That's right. Absolutely. That you can, if you need help is available in lots of places. All you have to do is raise your hand to do it. If there are financial advisors and tax advisors and legal advisors who are also listening to us today, if you have families that have DAFs, ask them about them. What do you want to do with that? Who do you want to donate to? I mean, encourage them to talk to a philanthropic advisor because, again, $300 billion sitting, making money for the foundations and the banks that this money is sitting at. It's not doing good in the world. Go do good in the world. Encourage your families to do good in the world. What is the most common mistake that you see families make, specifically with the donor advised fund, once they have one?
It is a set it and forget it type of tool. So I would say that's it. They forget about it. It stays there. And that is, honestly, there's so many reasons for that, but that is the biggest one. And that also lends itself to that $326 billion that's sitting in and that only, and depending on the figures, 72 to 75% is staying in the eight so only 20 to 25% is being deployed. So that's a big one. And it also, I would say within that, instead of a mistake, it's a missed opportunity, is that there are ways for families to bridge the investing side and the granting side, and DAFs allow for that. So with all of that aid that's there, another way to access and another way to help the flow of that capital is to actually look at the investing side of DAFs. So maybe not a mistake, but a huge opportunity that advisors and families could truly be tapping into when it comes to DAFs.
Okay. So what is the conversation that an advisor, a family office, really our industry in general needs to be having about philanthropy that we're not having right now?
So, and I would say for that, and especially with specific to DAFs, that when DAFs are being set up, I mean, truly like I said, it's that easy. So it's going into like a typical account. So with that one, almost everyone, when they're setting those up at any level, can access there's ESG funds. There's ways to tailor some of that, the investing side of the DAF from the very beginning and that shifting, part of things. The other stuff, kind of that middle ground, where's the huge opportunity, those folks with $100,000 to like $500,000, million, whatever that aspect, that's it's the CDFI, the community development institutions, like they have specific opportunities within that. You can actually tailor more of what and how you're investing. And then, of course, the more sophisticated aspects, you can do PRIs, you can actually tailor more of your investment policy statement. Like you can actually tailor and build in, you have a specific investing for impact. You want to invest in this type of business in your community. So there's way more sophisticated ways that if anybody wants to chat about, we can do that. But that, I would say, is ways to just start leveraging them. And that's the conversation, is like anything, if you want to do transactional, what's your risk tolerance? What's the level of money? Like we can base it on how advisors advise, but also how families and what they see as important to align with their actual values and their North Star. There's plenty of ways to do that.
Yeah. So I want to pull on a thread on that line, and that is, while donor advised funds, DAFs, are easy to set up, especially when you need to do some quick tax or estate planning, that huge. They're huge. Absolutely. But on the family side, depending on who you want to give to, they might actually not be a good vehicle. This coming full circle back to the first part of our conversation, there are things that you cannot give to through a donor advised fund. Can you talk a little bit about those, just so folks can understand depending on how you give and who you want to give to, that can also define vehicle you utilize.
So I would say also just benefit of DAFs also says the privacy. You can give anonymously. There's extra layers, so that there is that benefit.
True.
The same thing, depending on, I will say, actually, we had a client who gave to what was then the Dallas Women's Foundation. They started it and they ended up closing it fairly quickly because they were so limited in where they could give and how they, what organizations they could give to. So again, I would say there's some benefits for some families because parameters can help families make decisions.
Yeah.
You truly do. But the same thing of where you're giving, which, whether it's NPT, whether it's, I know I'm blanking on them, but it's just part of the conversation. It's also, I would say, great for advisors to know, and it helps them with the why, and it will help them narrow in on, should it be through your community foundation? Should it not? So I don't want to net, because there's so many of that, but I would say that's some of the narrow of some of these DAFs are you can only give to organizations that focus on environment. They can only focus here, that are only geographic, actually, like some of your community foundation. It's only in that radius. Great if that's the decisions, but there are limits.
Definitely.
And I'd say some of our families need those. I sometimes, please don't give me 200 choices. Give me 2.
Right. I have definitely come across certain DAFs that were very narrow in scope. They could only give to certain religions. They could only give to certain areas. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think kind of a general across the board is for money to come out of a DAF to be donated, it has to go to a 501c3 organization. That's that's like an IRS basic standard across all donor advised funds. Interestingly enough, I have had several families who wanted to donate to a local group for animal welfare, or they're raising horses. They're bringing in horses that were left because of fires. They're bringing in, cattle, various, whatever it is. They're doing something very hyper local. They don't have a 501c3 designation. It's not like you just go to the IRS's website and say, hi, I'd like to be a 501c3. Like, there's a whole process behind it. And it's awesome for those organizations who are denoted as that designation. But for those who aren't, I mean, literally, we wound down a DAF because this family wanted to give hyper local on the fly. They're doing something right now. Mercy Chefs. I mean, all of these really cool things, but they weren't 501c3, and so they couldn't do it through their donor advice fund or their foundation. They couldn't. So that
we talk about a generosity landscape. So that is when we talk about that sometimes it is a 501c3. It's what we think of as a charity. Sometimes it's investing with small businesses. So it is actually on the investing side of it. Sometimes, like you said, it's truly the generosity regardless of tax structure. So for that generosity landscape, what does that look like? Hence, one of our first questions is, what does generosity mean to you? What is like some of those moments? It helps to truly get at that, because a lot of times with our advisors, they're looking at what they're measured, which is the tax mitigation. That is not always and when we really listen to and we're curious with what our families want and need, there's a spectrum. And DAFs can be a phenomenal tool, but you're right, it has to be a 501c3. And we also have to understand that once those funds are in a DAF, they are no longer yours. They are no longer the family's. You advise on where they're deployed, or even on the investment side of it. Hence, when you started, it's good to understand what the investment side can look like, because we're now an advisor. They're no longer yours. So when you're saying wind down, that money never comes back to the family. What that means is you are then recommending to 501c3s or recommending 501c3s. And even within that, some of the mistakes are somebody wants to give to a very specific cause and it's a specific project. So that sometimes is not within what the DAF allows. It's if they want it very general, so there's just some things for families to understand and for advisors to understand. So it may be a tool for a short amount of time, and it may be something, and it's thankfully easier to wind down a DAF than it is a foundation.
Indeed. Right? Yes. To wind down a DAF, you discontinue funding and you make donations.
Correct. And
that's how you wind down a DAF.
A wonderful solution for likely your local community and or the community that you care about.
Absolutely. That's a good point, that you can't always get down to the program that you're looking for or that you want to give for. That's an excellent one.
And a lot of times DAFs advisors, they will do the best they can, but it depends on what they are then aligned with or what they're committed to. And the same thing, I think the other big opportunity, even to circle back to that one, of there's the grant side and the investment side. And there's so much opportunity that even for families, we had a single family office come to us about a month ago. They had third gen. One of the family members wanted traditional philanthropy. One wanted investing for impact. One I started with, do you know their why? They didn't, so it was a great place to start. But the next part was they already have a DAF. I know you're recommending a DAF. I know this single family office. They can do that together. One, it builds bridges within the generation, and they can work together. And then it also goes across generations when they bring that back to the table. So we're investing for impact. Here's what we're doing. We're leveraging this. There's just some really cool things that I said, mistakes and or opportunities, whatever you want to call them, that DAFs can help with.
Yeah, for sure. They absolutely have a role. Foundations have a role. Writing a check has a role. I mean, truly, it really does. So the circle back, the moral of our story today is it depends on your why and your who. And that's
your
really when. And your when. Yes.
That DAFs are very specific, but also I think that they can be, and they just, but like you said, how do we use all aspects of it? And I think that is what I would love to see is more folks leveraging. They've figured out their why, they figured out their values, their North Star, that their DAF investing, that capital can be flowing on both sides of it. As part of the generosity landscape, it can be.
Love it. So, Kerrie, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know that folks at least picked up a couple of things here and there, but I'm curious, what does FSO mean?
So I said I have an amazing business partner who's also my identical twin sister. And
that's so fun.
It is. Oh, it's amazing. So she is just a phenomenal human. With that, we also, when she was looking at starting FSO, it was truly based, that spark of curiosity. What is going to really keep us back to our North Star, which is that curiosity. And it's figuring shit out. That is what FSO stands for. There are many people that stand for this. No, it really, truly does come back to very simply. And that is what we honestly, our philosophy is as sisters, as a family, because we are a family business. We continue to figure it out together. And then we also, with our clients, like things can get messy, things can be fun, but that is part of where when those sticky bits, we figure it out together. We're here for you.
I love it. I love it. Kerrie, thank you very much for your time today, giving us some insight on donor advised funds, things for families to think about, starting with their why. Thank you very much for joining us today. I very much appreciate the conversation we've just had.
Thank you so much. It is always lovely to chat with you.
So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kerrie Mitchell with FSO Partners. If you are interested in reaching out and chatting with them, you can find all of her contact information below. Again, if you took nothing else from our conversation, I hope that you picked up, continue to ask your why. Why are you doing this? Who do you want to give to? And when do you want to give? I think those were some of the best pieces that came out of our conversation today. So I hope you've enjoyed this.
and can think a little bit more strategically and have more conversations with your advisory team. If you have a donor advised fund or a foundation, or you are just charitably inclined, we certainly encourage you to use those funds for good. Don't just leave them sitting on the sidelines. There's so many wonderful opportunities in the world to be able to give and support. And if that's where you are at, we hope you are able to do so. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me today on the Family Office Success Podcast. I hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable as you navigate the complexities of family office services. If you're looking for more ideas or resources, or want to explore how we can support your family office or your family through services and training and strategy, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at whiteriverconsultants.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates and expert insights. And if you're ready to take your family office to the next level, consider joining our mastermind, where we can help you manage that chaos and create better outcomes for the families you serve. Until next time, I'm Christi Van Rite, and this has been the Family Office Success Podcast. Take care and keep building for the future.